So good morning, this is Tom Rowe again. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn on Task Management. We have been doing these Lunch and Learns now for the better part of the last year and a half. This is going to be unique in the sense that it's going to be a four-part series where we talk about how one handles task management in Time Matters. When we started looking at this or thinking about subjects that we wanted to do with Lunch and Learns, or do for our Lunch and Learns, one of the things that came to mind was task management. It's one of those features in Time Matters that doesn't get a lot of press and all because it's very standard and straightforward in a lot of ways. It doesn't have the sexy factor maybe as some of the other features in Time Matters have. But what's different about it is that it's just something that everybody has to do every day, and it's something that's vitally important. And one of the things we've learned over the years of working with Time Matters clients is that being more efficient drives profitability and makes life easier. And so one of the things, so anyway, we'll talk about a variety of task management concepts over the next, this session and over the next ones that we have. The one thing I do want to make sure is that everybody was able to get a manual. You should have gotten an email today. If you go out to the OTB Consulting website, under our downloads section, we have a manual that we did for this, specifically for this. It looks something like this. So it's task management with Time Matters. I want to just quickly point out the agenda here and talk a little bit about what we'll be doing. We're going to talk about task management overview today, and then traditional to-do management within Time Matters. I'm going to talk about a concept called declaring task management bankruptcy, and that should be about as far as we get today. We're going to cover the delegation system in the next session. That'll take a good part of that next session. We'll also talk about a system that we developed for our bankruptcy product called the Click system, which is answering client questions. Then in subsequent sessions, we're going to talk about email management because that ties in really directly to task management, okay? I mean, all the emails you get that are immediately things you have to do, things like that. And then we're going to talk about some systems that we use internally for phone call and email diary systems, a phone call messaging system, using the Navigator, and some other aspects of task management. So this manual, which you've downloaded right now, don't go print a bunch of copies of it. We're going to continue to add to it as we go. I'll be going in the basic order that it's in today, okay, but we'll be adding to this document so that at the end of our 4 sessions, it'll be a very comprehensive document on everything that we've covered. Now, when we started talking internally about task management and why to do it, one of the interesting things we found within our own company, experts at Time Matters, was that we all basically did task management differently. And one of the things we concluded on that, or a couple of things we concluded on it, number one is there's a whole bunch of ways to do task management inside Time Matters. Number two was that while we work with our clients to try to, at some level, drive firm codifications of the ways that you should do things, there are also times where people can handle task management in a way that's best for them that might be different than others. And by that, when we started looking at the way that everybody in our office was using task management, we found out that everybody did a little bit differently. Now, we went ahead and came up with some firm-wide systems, just like we've helped many of you do, but we also looked at the way that each one of us did certain things separately and determined that when it comes down to task management, there's just times when certain people look at things differently. And so I'll talk to you more about that as the day goes on, okay? But the fact is there are a lot of ways, and that's why this is a 4-part Lunch and Learn. There are a lot of ways to do things in Time Matters to do task management. None of them are necessarily right or wrong. None of them are really either good or bad. There's just different ways of doing it, and if something works for you, then that's what you should be doing. So basically, we're going to go over techniques on how to do task management, Time Matters better, so we can help you guys get everything under control. Now, where to start when we talk about task management? Well, for me, the best thing to do is go back to the olden days. Maybe the olden days are different for us, but for me, it's way back before computers. And the question there was, well, how did we track tasks and things of that sort before we had computers? For me, I remember in my first job coming out of college where we didn't have computers, I remember just using a legal pad. And you would pick up a legal pad, and I'm sure many people on the phone share this, but you would pick up the legal pad and you would simply start writing down all the things that you needed to get done. And then as you got them completed, you marked them off. And about every third or fourth day, you tore those pages out and you rewrote your list and threw the other one away or filed it away. And then you kept doing that over and over and over again. So, for many of us, the first way we did task management was just a written list that got crossed off. That worked out fine, except for the fact that you always were constantly rewriting lists. You couldn't prioritize or order them or categorize them. You also had the problem of having to rewrite the thing all the time. Many of you probably, as kind of old school task management, use stickies. If you look at your computer monitor right now, there's stickies stuck all over your desk and your monitor and things of that sort, and that's the way that you handle what needs to be done next. Some of you do it with stacks of files on your desk. The upper left-hand corner is urgent, the far right-hand corner is back burner items, but you use that way. There's lots of ways that we've done it, but with the use of the computer, we have so much more flexibility of how we can add items onto a to-do list and then manage it so that we can more efficiently manage our time. So in Time Matters, to get started, I think the most logical place is to go to the to-do list. And if I had this closed right now and I were to click on the to-do list right here, the to-do list pops up. And when the to-do list pops up, this is a listing of all the to-dos that are in the system. Basically, the idea here is that this would be a list of things that I want to do. I'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes about how to make this a more manageable list. But the first thing I want to talk about is how do I get a to-do on there? Because the key thing is, when you look at task management, in my mind, is to get it out of your brain and onto, quote, paper. Get it out of your brain, get it into your system when you think about it so that you have it there and then you can manipulate and work with it. Okay, so the idea here is if I'm on the to-do list, how can I add a to-do? Now, when we work with Time Matters clients that are just new to the program, we normally just show one way of doing it, the way we think is the most common way. Because you all are more experienced users, we're going to show all the ways that you can add a to-do. And there's a bunch of them. If I'm on the to-do list, I can click on this green Add Record button, and a to-do record will pop up. Okay? I can go over here to Create New, and it pops up. I can create any type of record, including a to-do, using what we call an automatic relation. Click OK, and it pops up. Okay? I can come over to our Power Views. These are some of the custom Power Views that we designed for our clients and for some of our systems. And there's a to-do button right here. And if I click on the Add To-Do button, a to-do pops up. I can go over here and I can add to the main menu an Add To-Do button. So I'm going to right-click on the main menu, go to Customize. Okay, we have all these Add buttons here. And I'm going to add a to-do, click OK, and now there's an Add To-Do button on my main toolbar. So if I want to add a to-do, I click on the Add To-Do button, and a new to-do pops up. If I'm on the to-do list, I can hit the Insert key on my keyboard. So I'm going to hit the Insert key on my keyboard, and a new to-do pops up. I can use right-clicking techniques. Right-click, Add Record. Notice it says Insert. That's the Insert button I just hit, and a to-do pops up. I can use keyboard shift keys. Control Shift T pops a to-do up. I can come over here to File, New Record, To-Do. Notice the Control Shift T shows that there. Now again, I think that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 different ways that you can add a to-do from the to-do list. It doesn't matter which one you use. You already have adopted a way probably that's your preference of using it, and that's fine. Okay, but the point is if I think of something right now and that I want to get on my list, I'm going to come to my to-do list and I'm going to add it. So for me, I'm going to come here real quickly. I'm going to click on an add record, and I'm going to come over here and just quickly I'm going to say make sure to follow up with Sally about the case. And that's all I'm going to do. I am going to put a priority there of 1 because it's important. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And I'm going to hit save and close. Very fast, very easy. The idea is, excuse me, I'm going to get out of my brain, get it onto my list. So that's how you add a to-do. And I'm going to, again, talk about the fields in a second from the to-do list. Now, having done that, I think oftentimes I'm going to go to the case or the matter list. Oftentimes you're going to add a lot of your records from your case list, okay? And so I'm going to come here to the case list, and if I wanted to add a to-do to Barry and Marta Abel right here, okay, I can use a lot of the same techniques that I just showed you to add a to-do. But there's some of them that I can't use. I'm no longer on the to-do list. So I can't click on the green plus button because that's going to add a record of type case. That won't add a to-do. If I right-click and say add record or hit the insert button, that would add a case, not a to-do. So when I'm on the case list and I want to add a record like a to-do, I have to use some of the other techniques. For example, I could come over here and say create new. And when I hit create new, even though I'm on the case list, I can click on the to-do right here and create that. I can come over and click on the toolbar of the Power View to add a to-do record. And when I do that, a to-do pops up. Okay, so there again, I could do file, new record of type to-do, and I could do the Control-Shift-T. Personally, I like the keyboard strokes. I think that's the easiest way. So if I'm on something I want to add a to-do, I just hit a Control-Shift-T and a to-do record pops up. Now, one of the reasons that you add records like to-dos from the case list is because when you add a record like a to-do from the case list here, it automatically fills in the regarding lines. Again, if I come over and click on the Add To-Do button right there, notice that it already has Barry and Marta Abel and Barry Abel right here in the client fields. That would then relate this particular to-do record to this particular case. And so the idea behind that is by adding records from the case list, you get the advantage of not having to then manually enter in the case reference and the client name. Okay? But I wanted to point out the fact that most everything on the case list works, except those that instead of adding a to-do would add a case record. So let's go ahead and add another to-do, and let's review all the fields and go from there. So I'm on the Barry and Marta Abel case, and I'm going to add a to-do record. And the first one is the date. So the date for a to-do form is typically going to be today. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about the difference between events and to-dos. But typically, when I'm adding a date, or pardon me, a to-do record, the date just, again, is today. Remember, I want to get it on my list. And the idea behind that, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, is, and why that works is the follow field right here. See, what happens is, and notice it says date advances until done. When the to-do is added, by default, it should be set so that the follow goes on. And what this does is day to day, every night after midnight or when the first person logs in, if you have follow check, this date goes into 11:15, 11:16, 11:17, until you mark it done, and then follow turns off. The idea, so typically you're going to dump a to-do onto the list just using the date. Now, it may be that you put it on your to-do list right now and you say, look, I'm putting this on my to-do list, but I'm not going to get to this for a week or two. If that's the case, you can go ahead and put a date a week or two out. And then as your to-do list moves forward every night, it'll finally, quote, catch up with this to-do, and then this to-do will then show up on your to-do list. The next field is the priority. Obviously, priority tells you, what ranking that the to-do has, in what order it should be done. And typical systems are to use basically something like 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. You don't want to say, well, I'm going to do a 1 to 50 and this is a 47 or a 46. There's no difference between a 46 and a 47, right? So 1 to 3 typically works pretty well. People I've seen use 1 to 5. What matters is that you understand what a 1 means, or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or 5 means. Typically 1 means it's urgent, I need to get it done quickly, whereas a 5 is more of a back burner. One of the things that you'll see in a few minutes is I personally use a 0. Nobody else in my office does this except for me. They all laugh at me, I think. But I use a 0 for saying absolute, most important emergency issue. It really separates out from all the others the ones that I've got to get on now. In other words, I would never work on anything else until my 0s are done. Okay? But anyway, I'll do a priority of 1. Duration means how long do you think it's going to take? It's not really a field that's used that often with to-dos unless it's going to be related to billing. In other words, you might finish a to-do and then put in there the duration that it took to do it so that you have that information for subsequent billing. Okay? Code, interestingly enough, is also a field in to-dos that oftentimes doesn't get used. Okay? The reason is, unless you're going to actually look at your to-dos based on code, in other words, I want to look at the to-do that are draft letters, or look at to-dos that are file complaints, or whatever it may be, then code, you don't need to fill in the code. And remember, oftentimes you're just trying to get stuff onto your to-do list so you don't forget it. So code could be, though, what kind is it? And it could be something like, I want to do a follow-up, or or it's personal, or something along those lines, or it's a marketing to-do, etc. But oftentimes it's blank. Description is that which you would write on your to-do list, okay? Make sure to get the complaint, or let's, I'm kind of doing this in a bankruptcy package, so let's do it this way. Petition file, okay? And then you'd go to staff. So description is, you got 100 characters to describe what it is. If you need more detail, you can come down to the memo field and put that down here, okay? Staff is going to be the person who's in charge of it. Let's talk a little bit about staff. Staff typically on to-dos should be 1 person. And the reason for this is that if you put more than 1 person in the staff field, which you can do, it then shows up on multiple people's to-do lists. The downside to that is twofold. First, if you put the same task on 2 different people's to-do lists, you run the risk that each of them thinks the other one is doing it, and it doesn't get done. Kind of the reverse side of that is that if you put it on 2 people's lists, they both might start on it at the same time. Now you have 2 people working on the same task, and you're wasting time. So typically a to-do is going to have somebody's initials on it. I'm going to put my initials on it right there. Then you notice you've got the regarding lines that fill in. That's straightforward. And then down here you've got the follow that I talked about earlier. The follow makes sure that day to day to day, if the to-do is not done, it moves to the next day, then it moves to the next day, until finally you get it done. The follow, in fact, is that part of the to-do that sets it apart from everything else in our system. Certainly sets it apart from events, as I'll talk about in a minute. But it's really the only record that by default follow is set that you want changing day to day to day. Done means obviously you're done with the to-do, and when you click on it, you'll notice that follow turns off. The minute something's done, we don't want it to keep moving forward. Okay. Finally, there is a reminders field here. I'm not really going to go over that. Most of our clients use that in a very limited way, if at all. But to me, the reason it doesn't really apply is because a to-do is a reminder. A to-do is something that you're saying, hey, do this, or don't forget to do this. So in some ways, to have a reminder of a reminder seems redundant to me. So that's how you would quickly add a to-do. Those are the fields. I'm going to hit save and close, and I just added a to-do to the Barry and Marta Abel. How do I know that? Well, if I come over to my Power View and click on the to-do hyperlink item, okay, I would be able to see that there. Oh, okay, I know it's not looking at that's looking for a particular code. So, but I would be able to see the to-dos, and I'll show you that in a few minutes in our system. So now that we've added the to-do, let's go to the to-do list, and let's talk a little bit about the quick tabs across the top here that let us see the to-dos in a particular way. Quick tabs, I'm not going to do a whole session on quick tabs. I believe we've done a lunch and learn on them. If we haven't, we certainly will. Quick tabs are a way to set up memorized searches. If, for example, I click on mine, this shows me all of my quick tabs, okay? It shows me all of the quick tabs that I have added. If so when we set mine up, it basically says show me all of WRA's to-dos. If I click on 0, this shows me the zeros, the priority 0, priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, etc. Okay? Now, one of the things this is set up on, and a lot of our standard systems have this set up, is these are all of mine done or not done. So you notice some of them are stricken through. These are all of mine that are not done. Okay? What we have over here is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be people who are priority oriented. In other words, they do they want to look at their zeros and get those done, then their ones and get those done, and twos and get those done. Not everybody works that way. Many people work a case at a time. You'd go to the case, look at all the to-dos, and work those. Okay? You'll notice the plus. This shows a 6, for example. So if someone had a 1 to 10 priority, which I think is a little on the high side, but if you had 1 to 10, this would say, well, here are all the ones above 5 and above. So just, the quick tabs let you break down your information and see this based on priority. Okay? Now, keep in mind that the to-do list is the one list of all the lists. It's the one list that you're most likely going to use quick tabs for. And by that I mean you come to to-dos, it shows all the to-dos in the whole office. It's not very useful to you. First of all, you'll even probably want to see all of your to-dos, let alone everybody else's. So to-do list is the one where you're almost always going to go click on something like show me mine that aren't done, or show me mine that are due today. This may be if you set to-dos and you want to do the ones that are due today, or due this week, or this month. Let's talk a little bit about the ones that are due today. When it comes to task management, one of the things that you'll learn in any task management, any time management class that you take, is that you should sit down every day, look at the things that you need or expect to get done, and basically make sure there's a list or lists of what it is that you need to get done. One of the things that you can do is come in and look at this, and if I came here and said these are the things that need to get done today, I might look at this and say I'm not going to get around to that client call, or I'm not going to be able to check on that proof of claim. And what you ought to do is if you can't get to it, you should open it up and say, when am I going to be able to get to this? And let's say I'm not going to be able to get to this until next Monday. Notice it says Wednesday right there. I'm going to hit the up arrow until I get to Monday and hit save and close. It's off my list today such that I now have a reasonable list that I can handle today and get through these 5 things in addition to everything else I might have to do around the office. Okay? But the idea is that that has now been moved out of the way. It's no longer today or part of the week. It's part of the month. Okay? Check on the POC, or return the client was check on the POC. Okay? But that way, if every day you go in and look what it is, the beauty of it is if you get all 5 of these things done today, that's great. Okay? Then you could go to week and see what else there is, and then you could go to month if you keep going. Okay, but the idea is to evaluate everything. Now look, first thing in the morning, I get it that the minute you get your to-do list done, your day falls apart. I hear you. You know, that's the way it is for lots of people. You get, you know, all these great intentions of getting your checklist set up and everything, and then 3 clients call with emergencies or things of that sort, and your day just falls apart. I understand that. Okay, but you ought to take the effort in the morning to make sure that you know exactly what you're going to do that day, what to-dos you're going to do, and what, especially those of you that use BKexpress, what other parts of your system you're going to use to make sure that you get done what you need to get done. Okay? So that's a quick way of how you use quick tabs, okay, to then see your to-dos in a way. There's one more that's not on here, and that is I could have on here letters, discovery, drafting, things like that that are based by code. Show, you know, maybe I'm in the mood to dictate a bunch of letters. Well, if I clicked on, you know, letters to be drafted, then I could sit there in the next half hour and dictate letters or something like that. So that's kind of basically task-based to-do handling based on what it is that you're going to do. Now, one final thing I want to do on this list before I move on to a different concept is you can print a to-do list. Some people still like to take a to-do list with them. And so if I go and show all of mine that aren't done, and you'll notice that it's ordered by priority, to print this list out would be quite easy. You'll notice that we have the print button up here, and to the left of it I've got a button that says tag all records. So I'm going to click on that to tag all the records, and these 10 to-dos get tagged. Now I could have right-clicked tag records and done the same thing, or I could have used a Control-T shortcut or keystrokes to do it as well. But however we do it, we want these 10 records tagged. Once they're tagged, I can go to the print button, and it's going to allow me to print a to-do. And if you've never worked with the printing system here, it's very rudimentary, okay, but it's easy to use. I'm going to use what's called the list format custom. And what that does, it's going to use the columns you see right here as my list layout. So I click on List Format Custom. I go to Options. I don't want to show the memos. And I want it to show up not in date order, but in list order. In other words, the list here by priority. And when I do that and hit Preview, this is what a to-do report looks like. Ordered by priority. Here's what I need to do. There's a code if there is one. Here's the case reference right there. So obviously I would hit print instead of preview, but I need to show you that. Now, one of the things is you say, well, I don't want to come in and click on list format and go to options and turn off memos and make sure it goes to list order. Well, that's okay. One of the things you can do with report specifications is you can create one. Say this is the way I want my to-do list to print. I can click on add, make this a program level report format, report specs. And I can say this is for Tom's to-do list, and then I hit save, and I've got Tom's to-do list right there. And it memorized the show memos off, the list order, and the fact that it's list format custom. So the next time I want to print this, I would tag all the records, go to print, and simply choose Tom's to-do list. Then when I hit preview, I would see the to-do list the way I want to see it. Okay, so that's how you print a to-do list real quickly. It also talks to you a little bit about how one saves report specifications so you don't have to do all the settings and things like that over and over again over here. So by way of review, we've seen all the many ways that you can add a to-do record. We've gone through all the fields and discussed what they are and how they work. We've come to the to-do list. We've looked at the quick tabs, okay, and how we set up quick tabs. The delegation tab and the click tabs we'll talk about in subsequent sessions, okay? But we talked about using the quick tabs to see our list the way we want to see it, the way we want to process what we're doing. I'm going to move forward to a couple different concepts, but the first thing I want to talk about is something I've been teaching task management time matters for the better part of 18 years. And one of the things that comes up a lot is, well, when do I use an event and when do I use a to-do? In other words, what's the difference between an event and a to-do? And I think some of the confusion from this arises from the fact that when Time Matters is shipped, it has a to-do record called a deadline. And so the idea is that it's called a deadline. And so you look at a to-do and it says a deadline, and that to me screams event record. And so I think some people get confused on it. So let's talk a little bit about when to use an event or when to use a to-do. And technically, the difference between an event record and a to-do record is very simple. It's just the priority field and the time field. So if I'm here and I add a to-do record and I add an event record, the only difference between the two is that the to-do has a priority and the event has a time. Okay? So they both have duration. Event has to-do priority, event has time. So an event has a date and a time, a to-do has a date and a priority. I mean, technically, that's the difference. The main difference is the follow button, and that is, as I mentioned earlier, and that is that the to-do button is checked to follow, whereas an event is not. So to me, the difference between an event, okay, and a to-do is that an event is a time or a date and typically time certain, whereas a to-do is something that you put on the list and you're going to get around to it at some point. It may be in 5 minutes, but it may be in 5 days or 5 weeks. Okay, there's an example I like to use where I'm going to talk about the same thing that needs to get done, but in one way you would add it as an event, and the other way you would add it as a to-do, and that would be a telephone call. Let's say that after this seminar today, okay, I want to call one of you just to follow up and talk to you. Okay, well, there's 2 ways I can do that. One is I can email you and say, hey, I need to have a conference with you. How does next Tuesday at 10 a.m. look? And you might email back, looks great. So you and I would put down on our calendars an event that would say next Tuesday at 10 a.m. I'm going to have a call with Sally. Now, number one, it's a time and it's a date and a time certain. Tuesday at 10 a.m. next week, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call Sally. I expect her to be there. Okay, we've set a date and time certain. So that's going to be an event. It's going to be on your calendar, the whole works. Now, if when I finished the session today, I said to myself, hey, I need to call Sally and follow up with her about something, I could just as easily dump it on my to-do list. But I'm probably not going to go out to next Tuesday and go, well, I think I'll call Sally at 10 o'clock on Tuesday. No, I'm going to put on my to-do list and just say, call Sally. And maybe I don't get to it today, so it moves to tomorrow. And I don't get to it tomorrow. It moves to Friday. I don't get to it on Friday. It moves to Monday over the weekend. The point is, the same call to Sally in one way can be an appointment, date and time certain. In another way, it's just dropped on a list of things that needs to get done. And I think that illustrates the difference between an event and a to-do really well. There are some areas where it may not be quite so clear, and that has to do with the time being certain. So, for example, let's take a statute of limitations or some sort of deadline like that. Okay, there's certainly a date certain. Statute of limitations, there's a date certain by which you have to meet that. Arguably, there's a time certain there, probably 11:59 p.m., right before midnight. You have to file your complaint. Actually, it probably would be 5 p.m. when the clerk's office closes. But that's typically not what you're going to put on your event record. You're going to put on there the date and maybe something like 6 a.m. so that it shows up at the top of your calendar. In other words, the date's certain, but the time can be any time during the day. Okay, the same thing could be done for a birthday or something like that. Somebody's birthday is on a date certain, but you don't really care that they were born at 3 in the morning. Okay, you don't put down what time it is. So that's a time, that is an instance where an event has a date certain but not necessarily a time certain. In that case, we typically put 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. in it so that all of our date certain but time doesn't matter events show up at the top of your calendar. So that's a quick review of, and I've got that in the manual that you have. That's a quick review of the difference between an event and a to-do. To wrap up today's session, I want to talk to you about something that I believe in and have used in the past. Unfortunately, I hate to admit, but it's called declaring time management bankruptcy. Now, this has nothing, many of you on the phone know that we sell a bankruptcy package called BKexpress. It has nothing to do with that at all. What this has to do with is the fact that I've just shown you some techniques, and over the next Lunch and Learns, we're going to show you more techniques on how to manage your time inside Time Matters. But what we've found over the years is no matter how good you are at doing it, there are simply time when there's just time when you don't get around to getting things done. And what can happen is your to-do list, things like, can get overwhelming. In fact, some of you right now are sitting there saying, well, some of the stuff's great ideas and all that, but when would I ever have time? I look at my to-do list and I've got 500 things on it. I've got 60 things on it. How can I manage my time? How can I even get started with your ideas when I'm just being blown away by this massive to-do list? Well, about 6 or 7 years ago, I started reading some articles on the internet, and I've actually referenced you to some of them in our paper, where they talked about a concept called bankruptcy, email bankruptcy. And the idea there was that your inbox is overflowing with everything, so much so that it's weighing you down. It's not actually helping you. It's actually hurting you, because you look at your inbox and you see 5,000 emails. You can't possibly handle them all. What do? And the way that they talked about it on the internet, people who did this in declaring email bankruptcy was, the idea behind bankruptcy is to get rid of your debt, right? So your debt in this context is having 5,000 emails. Well, how do you do it? Well, some of these people in these articles just went in and deleted all 5,000 emails. Well, I can't do that. That would be, for those of you who are bankruptcy, that would be a Chapter 7, liquidation. I'm going to go in there, just delete all 5,000 of them, and then I'm going to start over, in essence. And you open up your inbox, and it's empty. Okay? Well, I can't do that. In task management, the same thing would be somehow going in and emptying your to-do list, so that as of an hour from now, you have an empty to-do list, and you can start fresh. That's a concept you hear in bankruptcy a lot, is shedding your debt so that you get a fresh start. Okay? And so the idea is, how can we get started fresh after you guys see how we do all this task management work in this session and the ones to follow? And so what I'm going to show you is not how to declare a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. That's liquidation, getting rid of everything. But I'm going to do what I call a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. What that means is we're going to get rid of all of our to-dos, but we're going to put them in a place where we can go back and we can look at them over time and make sure that they get done, or they're delegated to somebody else or whatever. But I basically get my to-do list down to 0, so that starting later today, if you do this, you're starting fresh, you have a new list, and you can stay on top of it going forward. I hope that concept makes sense to you. I've unfortunately over the years had to do that in email a couple times. And just recently, I hate to admit it, and Bob, my partner, told me not to admit it, but I will, I had to do it for my to-dos. My to-do list just got overwhelmed during a period of time where I was traveling a lot, things like that, and I had to go in and say, there's too many things here. I'm going to declare Chapter 13 bankruptcy on these tasks, and I'm going to start fresh and go forward, and it's been great. It was actually really great to start with that new list. Now let me show you how this works. Okay, I'm going to walk through this. The first thing you've got to do is you got to figure out, how are you going to code the to-dos? Okay, so how are you going to code the to-dos such that we know they're, quote, Chapter 13 to-dos? And to me, what I did, and you can use whatever field you want, is I'm going to go in and use the status field. Okay, and I'm going to put Chapter 13 in there, CH13 there, to designate that it's a Chapter 13 to do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that with all of these right here. So this will be a little lesson here for you. I have all my not done to-dos are tagged. I'm going to go to Process, change the records, create a new template and change the contents of a field. I want to change status to CH13. Again, you can choose whatever field you want. It doesn't really matter. And then I click forward, and I've just now changed the status on all of those to CH13 that you see right there. Okay, well, that's the first thing. So all your old emails have to be coded somehow to say, these are my Chapter 13 emails, or in this case, to-dos. Okay? The next thing that you need to do is to add a quick tab up here so that I can go back and look at my old Chapter 13. This is my plan. Those of you know bankruptcy will get the idea. This is where we're going to go work my plan. So I'm going to I'm going to go to Options. I'm going to add a quick tab. Okay? And that quick tab, I'm going to call it just Chapter 13. Just make it real simple and easy. I'll do a color of, say, red so it stands out here. Okay? I'll leave the, well, let's just get rid of a lot of these fields. I just want the description. The staff should be me. And I'll do the case reference there. Again, I'll just leave that simple. And the filter is going to be, what I want to show up on this quick tab is I want to show up where status is equal to CH13 and done is not equal to, and by the way, I can drop down on these as well, is not equal to yes. Okay? And so Chapter 13, status is equal to Chapter 13, and done is not equal to yes. When I click OK on that, I now have Chapter 13, and if I click on it, the Chapter 13 should be the same as my not done, right? Because I took all the not dones, I put Chapter 13 on them, and there they show up. So the final piece is, I would then have to go, and this doesn't take long, but I got to go to all my quick tabs here, and I've got to modify them to exclude the Chapter 13. So I'm going to go to my advanced search. I have one called not done, and that's what this not done quick tab uses. It uses this advanced search. And I'm just going to add one down here and say, and status is not equal to CH13. In other words, show me all the ones that are not done, but don't show me the ones where it's 13. In other words, show me where it's not equal to 13. And when I save that not done right there, and I save that as my to-do, notice my not done now is blank, and my Chapter 13 has what was there. And so starting today, okay, I would go do that on the zeros and the ones and the twos and the threes and things like that. But all of a sudden, once I did that, and let me just do one other real quick. I'll just do the zeros real fast. So if I go to priority is 0 and status is not equal to Chapter 13. Save it. And if I hope I used that there, yeah. Notice that 0 is now blank. And I can go to each one of those filters that I have associated with the particular quick tab. Is not equal to Chapter 13. And now my ones are empty. And suddenly I would have all this done. And so what happens is you now are starting from scratch today. And again, you wouldn't do this if you only have 10 of these. You do this if you have 100 of these and you're just way behind. Now, what's the final piece here? And then we'll open it up to questions and things of that sort. The final piece here, of course, is this. You can't come over here and say, show me all the ones that are not done. Oh, there's nothing here. Time to go to the golf course. Okay? That's not the point. The point is that you're trying to get a fresh start here. Okay? And so basically, you start adding to-dos today. You start managing them better. You keep your list manageable. Okay? And then what you want to do, and this is where the Chapter 13 comes in. In the Chapter 7, we would just ignore all the old ones, okay, because that's liquidation. Well, we can't do that. That doesn't make sense. Okay, you can't just take stuff you got on your to-do list, presumably, and ignore it. Things have to get done. So what you do is you would come to your Chapter 13, spend 5-10 minutes a day, and come in and run along with this. And you would look at that and go, oh, that one's already done. And you could right-click and mark it done, and it would drop off the list. Okay. Oh, you would say, this one here, oh, wait a minute, I really need to handle this return client call. Double-click on it. Remove the Chapter 13 designation and hit Save and Close. It's now over here on your Not Done list. So you can move things back in in a timely fashion, not all at once, that then allows you to manage it. So I hope that makes sense to you. Some of you may say, Tom, I'm great at keeping all my tasks done and everything. Hey, power to you. Glad to hear it. For those of you who are so far behind that no matter how hard you try, you'll never be able to dig your way out of all your tasks that you've got loaded up. This is a great way to get a fresh start, yet still have everything else you need right here to make sure that over time, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you get through all this and make sure that it gets done. So that's going to wrap it up. I'm going to open it up for questions in a minute. That's going to wrap up our session for today. Let me remind you before I open up to questions that our next session is going to cover delegation and probably what we call our click system. But with that, I need to take a second here to open it to unmute everybody. And when I do that, remember, we haven't been able to hear anybody now, but now we can. So if you talk, we can hear you. Okay? And I'm unmuting. And if anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask. I'm almost done here. Okay, so I can hear everybody now. So does anybody have any questions? Perhaps make sure you unmute if you have any. Any questions about the to-do system that I talked about today, or the declaring task management bankruptcy?
I have a question.
Jump in.
Can you create a to-do from a Time Matters messenger?
You can. I thought we'd cover that in a later session, but real quickly, if I'm on a Time Matters message, okay, that might be something like this, it makes a lot of sense. If you just do a Control-Shift-T from that, the to-do list, the to-do record pops up, and there's the message becomes the memo of the to-do.
That's the greatest thing I've ever seen. Time Matters is such a wonderful program.
So does anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, more than happy to answer any questions and all. I appreciate your time on this Lunch and Learn. Like I said, next you can get our position paper or our white paper on the delegation system. You can download that from our website. There's a URL to it inside the PDF that you downloaded today. We'll email you all. Make sure you get out there and sign up for our next seminar, for the next Lunch and Learn, and we'll email you and let you know when we've updated the documentation for that as well. There'll be a little bit of updating, but most of that's going to be in the delegation system documentation that's already up there. So one last time, are there any questions that anybody may have? Okay, well, not hearing any, I want to thank you guys very much for attending the Lunch and Learn. We're looking forward to the next few sessions on task management. And again, one of the things we've asked before, and we would continue to do so, please feel free to email us with ideas that you would want covered in Lunch and Learns. We're going to be doing these every month for the foreseeable future. We'd be more than happy to cover different subjects if you'll send them to us. Thanks, everybody. Had a great. Hopefully, this is a good session for you. Have a great day. We'll look forward to talking to you soon.